You guys know you're in a Couchbase section, a mobile session. If you're not, then you picked the wrong but right session to be in at this time slot. My name is William, and we're talking about Couchbase Mobile today, how to basically build applications that work offline. Just curious, kind of want to know the mix of the crowd, Android versus iOS developers. Android, Java basically, iOS developers, both? Okay, that's why there's some overlap there. Okay, cool. Like I said, there's going to be some cool stuff. What you see here is just a bunch of stickers. I think the coolest thing is the VR glass. I don't know if you got to try it. Tweet something out, say something cool, take a picture. There's also one battery charger too. So yeah, there's some swag I want to give off to us. Hope you guys enjoy for the conference. My name is William. I'm going to move this a bit because I can't see the slides. My name is William. I'm a mobile developer advocate at Couchbase. Specifically, Couchbase Mobile is the product. There's actually two products for Couchbase. There's a server product, and then there's a mobile product. Our team of engineers is pretty small. We're like 13 to 15 hackers. Some are architects, so they don't code day to day, but they're pretty much very versed on the topic, and they do plan the roadmap. That's my Twitter if you want to reach out to me. I used to work at Twitter, so when I worked there, they asked me, do you want to change your handle? Because it's not kind of like business appropriate, because I can pick any handle that's inactive for 3 months. Thought about it for a while. I ended up just sticking it with Sweetie Will. So if you want to hit me up, that's faster than email. My manager actually goes on Twitter and says, can you answer your emails? My background, I'm Canadian. I did so right there, that's the little Canadian slur. So I did time at McGill University as a electrical engineer, then worked at BlackBerry doing GPS embedded. How's my voice? Can you guys hear me in the back? Good? So? I'll talk louder. So I worked at BlackBerry, then worked at Microsoft doing Windows Phone. So essentially two mobile platforms no one cares about now. And Twitter as a partner engineer focusing on the ads SDK for MoPub. Have you guys heard about NoSQL or know what it is? Who hasn't? Because if we all have, I will just brush through this quickly. Who hasn't heard about what NoSQL is? Don't be shy. Oh, that's great, sweet. I'll just go through this quicker than usual. I think it's important because why mobile should consider NoSQL as a solution is because we basically are hyper-connected right now. You probably have more than one device on you. You probably have things basically doing reads and writes on the background thread. And essentially you have a lot of people connected. So you have all this database write operation. And data itself, especially if you look at Facebook or Twitter, like one explicit intent, like a check-in on Facebook, gets you like 10 data points, right? So there's a lot of unstructured data, things you don't understand, like how things are going to be mapped according to what other data structure or data types. And because of that, like the traditional, I don't know if you're familiar with like UML diagramming. And this is trivial because this is actually typically a smaller, I just took a slap shot of like one of my previous intern projects. And yeah, you could actually take any pivot point here and traverse this. And it's painful because mobile changes so quickly and so fast. And what NoSQL is essentially is taking two of those tables and flattening it down. It should be two equal signs. This is the equivalent of one like JSON file, right? Just key value pairs. There's no like SQL language queries or joins or select statements. Your entire business object graph could be retrieved just from a single JSON file. So that's why NoSQL is related to mobile. And what we're doing here at Couchbase is related to also NoSQL. So that's why the NoSQL conversation comes into play in terms of like what a database is and why it matters. Other than that, there's a bunch of other solutions out there if you haven't heard about. NoSQL is just simply the anti of SQL, right? It could just be paper and pen you can just paper and pen it, that would be called NoSQL. But there's graph-based, document-based, key value-based. A bunch of this stuff is pioneered by companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google. Essentially, they were trying to retrofit the current status of how data gets interpreted into their own use cases, and they figured that the technologies that was on the market simply was not fit for their use case. So they pushed that really hard. So DynamoDB, that's Amazon. Cassandra is something that came out of Facebook. It's open source. I think they still use it for their search field in there. And the list goes on. But essentially, yeah, column-based is another one. You can look at this at your own time. Graphbase, the most popular Graphbase one is Neo4j. If you heard about them, they're pretty cool. So there's different technology out there for different solutions, for different use cases. I'm not really biased to one or another. They're just all cool. For us, for Couchbase, it's a document database. For those who, I'll go through this itself, but it's really fast for querying. It's very fast to import your data, write your data. So Couchbase is an open source project. We forked from CouchDB. If you don't know who they are, CouchDB is also an open source project. The essential thing that I think remains really is the sync protocol that Couchbase maintains that we contribute back to the source. Another company that did fork from CouchDB is Cloudant. So IBM bought Cloudant, so there's not much to talk about there, because they got bought. But for us, it's essentially open source stack. So coming from Microsoft and BlackBerry and Twitter, it's actually very insanely cool because we work pretty much in a fishbowl. Our entire stack, I can show you later, we plan it through Waffle.io. I don't know if you guys heard of that too. It's like a sprint planning tool, product planning tool. It's all open source. The entire stack is on GitHub. So if you go to github.com/Couchbase, what you see from what Disney uses, eBay, PayPal, Staple, they're using Couchbase. For us as grassroots developers or mom and pop shops, development houses, from a feature standpoint, we're not getting anything different than what they're getting. So essentially how Couchbase makes money is we follow the Red Hat Linux model. So if you as a developer or Apple as a developer gets lonely, like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., they can pick up the phone and call somebody. Yeah, they're not calling me, but they're calling some tech support. Otherwise, you would revert to the forums. Myself, I answer the technical questions on the forums. I even answer technical question in IRC or Twitter. But essentially, that's the open source model that Couchbase follows. It's pretty cool, and it's all out there. We actually have community pull requests come in. So we have community member that says, hey, can you work on this feature? But it's not, we're limited in bands too. So it's either we can't make it in time, but then a community makes it and say, hey, check it out. This is fit your needs. And we go back and forth a bit on it, and then it got merged into product. So that's something I've never experienced before, and that's what's going on here at Couchbase. Some more customers to show you that basically my paycheck comes in every single 2 weeks, and that the technology you're using, if you choose to use this, is not going dark on you. So if you guys are web developers, there's so many frameworks that pop out every single 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and then they disappear. No one supports it. This is supported because you got customers like EA using it, LinkedIn using it, eBay, PayPal, right? Like it's not going dark. So yeah, that's what Couchbase is in a bird's eye view nutshell. But like I said, there's a lot of cool tech out there. What's the business use case? Like, why use this over a Firebase? Why use this over I don't know, Realm? I don't know if you guys heard of them. There's a lot of different stacks out there. Why, even before the stacks, why should you even consider something of this sort, taking your engineering time, development time into your own cycles? So the business problem is actually quite simple. If you look at applications today, when you design for an application, when you model, you ask your product manager or your UX designer, you're pretty much designing for this happy scenario. So right now, I don't know, conference here, I'm on T-Mobile, so that's another topic. Open your cell phone, go to your favorite application, see what happens, right? Sometimes it takes a lot of time to render an image, or it takes a lot of time to populate content. That's all dependent because simply on a connection to the cloud, right? If you look at, just go to New York, just go on an airplane, go on a beach, right? Go to some very remote area on a beach. And most applications get you this kind of experience, right? You probably all felt it, but as designers, engineers, right, or UI folks, you probably have more than a simple oh, this doesn't work. You probably think why it doesn't work. But for the 99% folks out there who's going to be using your application, they don't care because this is the experience they're going to see. And when they say try again, most likely they're going to go to your app store and give you a horrible rating and review. So from experience, if this happens, you might as well pull it out and rebrand it, rename it, and put it back in again because this hurts like app discovery altogether. So why does like something like this happen, right? Like essentially we're doing REST calls up to the cloud. We're doing HTTP REST calls again and again to fetch content. So if you, even Instagram, it's kind of sad. You open Instagram, it's doing a GET request for the pictures. And if you close your app and whatnot, even shut down your phone and open, it's doing the same GET request again for those pictures. Like, why are you doing it? It's very expensive, and from a compute standpoint, it's not necessary. Like, your resource could be used for somewhere else. So if you look at where people give you bad ratings, like those 2 stars, 1 star, if you actually like look at like a Gaussian curve and the 95 lower percentiles of these things, it's actually due to like your application freezing, it's crashing, it's slow, it's not responsive. It's because the content is hanging there. You actually have a timer, there's a callback function, you're waiting on something, and your UI thread is like, oh, I should be updating something, nothing's happening. Those things as an app developer is something you can handle as a scenario. But you can only handle it because the only reason you can't handle it right now is because the location of the data is somewhere else. That's why, right? Like, if you don't have data locally, if you don't pre-populate something when you download your app and it feels like it's there, you actually pretty much have like UI elements just waiting, placeholders, right? Waiting to have content rendered in those cells, right? If it's a picture. So the location of the data is really that issue and that problem. Now, how Couchbase and how the solution really out there is a hybrid solution. Like, why can't we simply detach ourselves from the cloud, right? Why can't we just have all your operations local, like all your CRUD operations, your create, your reads, your retrieve, your updates, your deletes. It's essentially there's no database on your phone. You probably have to do with cache or your file system, right? It's actually not easy overall. So the solution is that you can actually store your data locally, and then when you have a connection, write a logical form to sync that back up or pull data from the cloud. So that's the solution. And what usually happens, and there's actually white paper of customers using this or developers using this, is that your ratings go up tremendously. So one example is Ryanair. Ryanair is an airline company in Europe. So they had a mobile application. If you look at their ratings, it's like 1 star, 2 star. One person actually wrote, I have to put a star system because otherwise like I'll put nothing. It'd be like 0. And after they used Couchbase, what happened was that the rating was in the 4 or 5 stars. Like, it was just tremendous. Like, there was no like medium. Everything was just like from 1 to 0 to like 4 and 5. Ryanair, for those who are not familiar, it's like if you look at all airline applications, simply put, they suck. Like Delta, like I'm not naming names here, but like all airline applications, it's just, it doesn't work, right? Like, it's ironic because you're on an airplane, you're on airplane mode, this thing doesn't work. So Ryanair felt that and wanted to look for a solution. This is something they implemented. So check them out. Even though if you don't fly with Ryanair, that's fine. Their application is pretty cool, and the use case of what they're doing is pretty simple, but actually there's a lot of value prop. The one thing I feel like why offline matters in this scenario is simply this, right? Like, here's this, but if you spend engineering time, designer graphic time to outsource or whatnot and get these graphics in here, like, oh, we care so much about UI or UX, like, this was God mighty Steve Jobs, like UX matters. Well, guess what? All your resources spent on designing for those things, coding, programming, it's behind this. So I look at it like offline is a feature that enables this to happen, right? So even before you talk about your great UI experience, UX experience, if you're stuck behind this and you don't have offline support as a feature, that's what happens. So that's why I feel like it makes a ton of difference to have a local database that supports offline functionality. How I came about with Couchbase was simply look at Twitter. If you're working at Twitter, you can't tweet offline, right? Like, you can't even cache a tweet. Now, I can speak offline about that topic, but essentially, there's a reason for it. And when I looked at like how to create something offline with Twitter, this is pretty much a baked out solution that I could just easily implement. So that's why offline matter. What is Couchbase Mobile? It's essentially the stack. You got Couchbase Server in the background that acts like a data bucket or cluster. For us mobile developers, just think of it like somewhere you put your data. It's not hosted by us, so that's another advantage. You can host this anywhere. I have it on DigitalOcean. I have it also on AWS. You can have it local too. For the demo I'm going to show, there'll be a local Couchbase server and sync gateway. Sync gateway is like a data proxy, like a highway, think about it, or a freeway. The left lane is for motorcycles, the right lane is for something else. Essentially, it's data. You can orchestrate your data through sync gateway. Couchbase Lite is where I live day in and day out. It's basically a library that you put inside your project, your Android Studio or Xcode project, and it gives you the offline capabilities. It's a library. So with that, you basically have a mobile application that has Couchbase, but also local persistence. And then why you have sync gateways, basically you have replication. You can replicate upwards and downwards, push and pull. My perspective is mobile, so from mobile's perspective, you push data to the cloud, and from the cloud's perspective, mobile's perspective, you pull data from the cloud. So you have pull and push replication, and you can write a stack, a logic towards it, or you can just have continuous replication. Think of it like sockets. You just always listen in on any changes, and it will update accordingly. One of the cool things that we do have also is called live query, and don't get too drawn up by the nomenclature. It's essentially a reactive UI way to do data rendering. So anytime there's a change, right, we basically have that rendered on screen. So it feels like it's real time, right? Any questions now before I go on? Nope, cool. So the focus for us is these two pieces, Couchbase Lite and Sync Gateway. So with Couchbase Lite, it's just a NoSQL database. With Sync Gateway, it's a piece where you basically decide who gets provision to what data, who has access, who doesn't have access. So I'll go through Couchbase Lite first, and then we're going to lead into Sync Gateway. So what Couchbase Lite is simply, it runs in process, very small footprint. Android is about 630 kilobytes. iOS is about 500. And you can build from source also, so it doesn't matter. I got it down to about 380 on a Raspberry Pi, so it runs with embedded systems too. And it's pretty cool from an ROI standpoint. NoSQL is only because like when you data model your keys and values, we're talking pretty much like dictionaries, right? So that's why it's a NoSQL database. I'm talking more in the nomenclature of web developers or developers in general. Like I said, it's a document-oriented database. What's really cool how we do indexing is using MapReduce. So don't know if you are familiar with that. It's a way to do data processing. Basically, you basically map out like a particular key and have that key emit a value, and you basically query against that key. So the idea here is if something doesn't change frequently, you can index first. You might take more time than usual to make an index, but once that index is done, that index or dictionary or like a yellow page book doesn't change, you essentially can just do operations like one, right? Because you're just taking a key out. Event notifications also abstracted out. So this is like, essentially you can have a background thread or UI thread. Anytime there's a change in your server or in your cloud or data gets updated, you can have the UI thread render that data accordingly. So event notifications like, let's say everyone's updating a Google document, right? Or essentially a document. And if there's a change, you can have some sort of OS level pop-up or toast, or simply have a user, like if it's Android, have a background intent sent an email, right? Implicit intent there. The sexiest thing is master-master replication. So this is, if you don't care about anything else, like this is the feature that makes a lot of sense in terms of where mobile is going, where that trend is going, with wearable tech, with experiences that wants to be seamless. Master-master replication, if I can explain this a bit, or we basically sync, is essentially there's no master-slave concept. There's no primary, there's no secondary. It's essentially eventual consistency. So it doesn't matter if I write something, somebody else writes something, eventually we'll all have the same data. Assuming that it's like an open database, you don't have any like provision, like the intern can get something, the senior engineer can get something else. You can write logic towards that, but essentially it's there to have eventual consistency or master-master, that everyone will have the same data at an eventual time when you have Wi-Fi or signal connection. What an oriented document-oriented database gets you, essentially it's key value, but with versioning. So what versioning is, it means that usually when you have data that writes and overwrites again, you're not keeping any copy, right? You're keeping the latest revision and nothing else. So with versioning, you basically have a revision tree, right? Other solutions out there, not naming names, it's based on the premise of like last write wins. So imagine you're like going to a club, you got there first, the person came after you is going to get access in the club. You're not getting into the club at all. So with versioning is pretty cool. It's schemaless, like I talked about. Schemaless essentially, I dislike to use the word schemaless because anything in production is never schemaless, right? There's always going to be some sort of structure or organization. Schemaless means simply like, remember the first diagram I showed, that UML diagram? Essentially, you're not digging yourself a grave before you decide on a particular track or feature. So schemaless, you can change it really fast accordingly, helps with data migration, helps with understanding how your documents will change over time. And because of that, you can run your team faster, you can code even faster too. So that's the advantage of having a document-oriented database. This is some Java Android code, so for those who are iOS developers, you can translate this, but essentially, for Couchbase, once you import the library, the manager is a parent class. So when you reference or instantiate a database variable, it's referencing a manager. So when you do database, when you pass in a string value that's called demo, if it doesn't come back, if it returns null, it basically creates a database instance. If it does, you're using the database instance. So remember when I talked about NoSQL key versioning documents here? It looks and feels just like a hash map, right? It's like a dictionary. So in Android, it references a hash map class. In iOS, it would be like an NS dictionary. So we create a hash map there, and we use its class properties called put. And we put in foo bar. Foo is a key, bar is a value. Your value, imagine you could just be anything, right? It could be a blob, it could be a URL, like string, it could be anything you want it to be. But essentially, if we do properties.put and you put in those values, your hash map or your properties there contains the key called foo and the value bar. And then when you do document equals database.create document, you see how the create document method there is referencing the database variable that we created on the first line of code. So when you create a document there, the document is already referencing the parent class of demo. So now if you think of it like, if you want to think of how this looks, you have a database called demo, and you have a document called document that references the demo database. And then the last line when you say document.put properties, and you put in or you pass in the parameters properties, remember properties is just the hash map there, in 5 lines of code, you have local persistence. So if this is not even talking about sync. Right then and there, you have data on your device. So if I shut my phone off, if I go on airplane mode, I can render that again, right? So all joking aside, like, for example, like Tinder, you can Tinder offline, right? You can have a background thread that downloads a bunch of pictures, persists this locally, and then when you're on the airplane or in the subway, you're just reading off that so-called database or document database. What NoSQL looks like is simply like key values, right? So I have a value type called session. So this is my entire object graph I can retrieve out. So imagine I have more than one object. I have type session 1, type session 2. I can basically look for that. If it matches, then start reading my actual session property, my session content. So for example, like, what's my ID, the location? So I'm in New York now. Previously, I lived in Montreal. You can have your location as long as you want, right? But it comes down to performance. So it's always like an abstraction or trade-off. So if your location is huge, let's say I've been to like, I don't know, 10,000 cities. I've lived in 10,000 cities. I wouldn't want to query my location afterwards. It could just be something where I keep the latest and greatest or the past 2 years location where I've been. My speaker ID, my time, it's essentially keys that you retrieve out. You pass in, if it's there, you can do whatever you want with it. And you can see how cool and quick this is, because imagine there's another property. Let's say it is method, right? Like ID, location, speaker, time, title, track. It could just be also number of days, right? This conference is 3 days. You can actually put in another key, just dump it in there, as opposed to imagine, okay, let's come back to that UML diagram. Where should that be? Where should that be located? Should we create another table? If we create another table, we have to join all of that together once again and then do another select statement. So that's why you can code fast with a JSON database. Map reduce indices, basically you build your indices in your native language, so just within your IDE. And because of that, you can have fast persistence, fast querying, and on top of that, you just set breakpoints in your IDE. That's the coolest thing. It's not like you need another application to look into your database, like Toad, for example. Just within your own development environment, you can just do all of that, and you can see your data being passed in. Change notifications, basically observers, right? Lets you listen for that. You can listen to it at the database level, the document level. It cuts down on a lot of code, right? You don't have to basically be pinging the server, like, do you have data? Do you have data? Essentially, if there is any changes, your callback function when you design it should basically be creating or accommodating for that. Sync, full master-master replication, like I explained. You can have it continuous, so just like sockets, and ad hoc. You can attach it to the intent, like for example, on app exit, take everything that's local, push it to the cloud. On app start, pull everything down, or have basically tie it to an action. And cuts down on a lot of code, like I said. And the coolest thing is conflict detection. So I'll showcase that too in a demo. Conflict detection, if anyone who ever programmed protocols, Bluetooth or wireless stuff, like with handshaking, being at BlackBerry before doing GPS development work, it's like I was Wiresharking every day, so it's a pain to deal with packets passing and handshakes and whatnot. All of this stuff is abstracted out for you. Where can you get it? So Cocoapods, those who don't know what Cocoapods is, it's just like a central for all your software. Maven Central, it's equivalent. Android basically. NuGet for any Xamarin developers, C#. Okay, we got you covered too. We have to, it's Microsoft, right? GitHub, if you're a big cowgirl or big cowboy, you can build from source. And you can rip out features or add features on your own. It's under Apache 2 licensing, so just say thank you, I guess. And maybe shoot a PR if it's cool. And we just announced Unity support also. So hopefully my demo will be ready for Seattle PAX. I don't know if anyone here are game developers, or PAX is a great gaming conference. I'll be heading over potentially. Maybe not, because it's quite a flight. Xamarin supported, PhoneGap support. We have Ionic support as well. We also support our founder, Chris Anderson, works closely with the PouchDB community. Don't know if you know PouchDB is pretty much open source JavaScript framework that also supports offline. Why is it related to Couchbase? The syncing stuff that does like replication, that's using Couchbase. So PouchDB, look it up. It's not related to Couchbase, but yet it is, because the sync protocol and what they use at the sync gateway level is Couchbase mobile. So PouchDB. Probably wonder why there's a next over there, next symbol. Doesn't support anything that far back, but our iOS engineer used to be part of like Steve Jobs' like special team. So he worked on a product called iCloud or iMessage, which was the BlackBerry BBM killer, because that's essentially what got everyone using and stuck using it. So yeah, our lead engineer for iOS is used to work at Apple. So, oh, CouchDB's here. Sync gateway, like I mentioned, is the piece where you do your authentication. So user authentication. We have Facebook support just like as an example, but you can roll your own, like LDAP. You can just have your server do some email authentication, have some client-side authentication, but it's just open for you to do whatever you want to do. Authorization, of course, come hand in hand. And based on those two, you get data orchestration. Think of Sync Gateway like a CDN, right? And like again, how this works is, doesn't matter if you're using iPhone, Android, Raspberry Pi, tablet, desktop. Doesn't matter what platform, web, like Ionic, Pouch. You basically sync that data to a database cluster called Couchbase Server in the background. You can have multiple Couchbase servers. You can have multiple sync gateways, whatever orientation you like to use. So the sync function is basically what you design yourself with. So you can basically have, these are actually functions and parameters. Basically, these are the APIs. Like you can basically pass in a user for a particular document. That parameter could be an array of IDs that has access, a particular row of a user. It could be an XOR kind of environment, not just like positive. Anyone that's like not anyone in there, you basically blacklist, right? For example, this is where you do your privacy, a bit of privacy. Channels, I could talk about. Channels is a way also to be, like you can subscribe to your channel. Think of it like RSS feeds, where I can subscribe to the sports channel. I can subscribe to the Korean channel, right? You can put anything in there, and the names that's going to have access to that channel, they will get that data back. And again, same thing for access and row. So here's an example, like, you know, there's multiple channels. Sync gateway is basically providing that data orchestration piece. One cool thing, I don't think I have time to demo it, but I just want to talk about. There is a demo. You can look online. I can pass you some stuff. Anyone know what P2P or peer-to-peer is? Who doesn't know what peer-to-peer is? That's great, because peer-to-peer is where we're trending towards. Is that we actually don't need a server. Like, it's expensive. No one cares. Peer-to-peer essentially, so if you go, so I live in coffee shops. I literally work and code in coffee shops. And a lot of times when the internet's wonky or goes down, I can't swipe my credit card, right? Like you have to do cash or you do like an IOU. Basically, I'm there all the time. The reason is because we're in that scenario that's on the left-hand side where you have a parent, you have children, and hey, it's like, you have to pass everything back up to the cloud and have the cloud do something and push it back down to a child, right? Peer-to-peer, essentially, we're abstracting away the server. We can just do transactions, passing data, mobile to mobile, client to client, without going to the cloud, right? You can go to the cloud eventually at your own terms, as opposed to always going up and coming down. So with Couchbase Lite, that library, there's basically an HTTP server on it that basically you can create like a waterfall, whatever transfer protocol you want, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, to do that data passing. So that's really cool. Peer-to-peer supported. I think it's essential, right? Like imagine you're in Disney World, in Orlando, you want to basically pass data to somebody, and somebody can't be reached, you can basically hop, right? You can hop it to somebody in the back because there's somebody using the same application, imagine the Disney application, and you can basically pass data to that person without having the whole server push data, dump a whole bunch of data downwards. You just have to do it once to one person. The first person that gets into that area, that person who gets in that area can be like the node or the disease and just populate everyone nearby. That's what peer-to-peer is. Essentially, peer-to-peer is related to mesh network. For anyone who didn't grok what I was talking about, we're all familiar with the star topology. Like, mentioned the middle piece is your server, and it shoots out to all your edge devices or client devices. The ring network, you know, if a particular edge goes down, you're pretty, you know, you're in the dark. mesh network, doesn't matter if a node goes down or edge goes down, that entire structure can be maintained depending on logic, of course, but everyone can get data. That's what peer-to-peer is supporting, a mesh network type of topology. Just some third-party application. I named some big names, but some third-party apps that's supporting this. Clue, it's a female app, but like still, it's pretty cool. It's basically a female health management app. Ed is like a logistics application that does tracking, trucking. Imagine like you're a truck driver, you go out to some remote area, you lose band. You can still basically do data collection and then sync accordingly. Front log is really cool. I can show this on my laptop because I actually use it. It's kind of like an Evernote. And the list goes on. Ryanair is the third one to the last, like 1, 2, 3. The one that has a yellow, looks like wings or looks like a harp. Scoremore is actually using PhoneGap with Couchbase. And Scene is a UK app, kind of like an Instagram. It's pretty cool. And there's a whole bunch more that I'm not even listing. You guys want to see a demo? Yeah, okay. You mind passing this around? Got some stickers. Yeah. I'm still a kid. I actually like stickers. It's kind of funny. So, don't mind my desktop. It's a bit noisy. You guys heard of Genie Motion? All right, that's what I use. Ding. So you can see I'm running 2 different images. Okay. Ding. Okay. Okay. So, 2 separate applications. Let's see if this works. Oops. Why did I flip it? Anyways, leave that open. Cool. So, we're not in Boston, but, oh yeah, I don't have a server up and running. Let's run a server. So this is Couchbase Server running in the background. So let's see if this works. So we're in Jacksonville. So right there, for example, you get local persistence, right? It's persisted, so if you don't believe me, let's kill this application. Let's go in here again and see if it's there. See, Jacksonville's there. This one, I don't like this orientation. I'm gonna kill this and reopen again. This is Nexus 5. Nexus, Google Nexus 5. That's startup. So basically this application is a demo that showcases persistence, sync, and conflict. And the application has already been authenticated using Facebook OAuth. So that's why you have data basically being passed or not being passed, but you can basically log out, log in again. This one's not showing up. That's sad. Save. Did it break on me? Start it one more time. Genumotion doesn't do this usually, so I use them all the time. Pretty quick, really quick. Yep. Okay, let's see. So let's kill this. Open it again. There, you see it just popped up, right? That's what I mean by master-master, eventual consistency. The reason I kill the app and open again, essentially I have the sync protocol, like the sync API attached to on app start. Because this one's been running for a while already. It's local, but it also synced to the server. So it's up in the cloud. So when I kill this and open again, it basically did a pull, right, off the server. You can see like it's two different instances. Like this is 6.7. Sure, I'm not like hard coding and messing with you guys. This is 36, two separate images, two separate experiences. And you can see on this left, if I let it go, Wi-Fi is really weak, right? So eventually, it would be the same. So let me create another list, right? Because we are in Florida. You guys stole the Montreal Expos. Just kidding. You didn't. I'm from Montreal, so. You can see this is a new list, so this stuff is gone. There's Florida here, and I don't know if there's Florida going to be in here, but you'll eventually get it. Let's see. Well, it's not there yet. Maybe this is being pushed to the cloud still. I know it's funny, right? Like something so small takes so long. Yeah. I don't want to do a ping test, but let's go back to Boston since we have it already working here. We'll check later in the end. What's really cool is if you go on an airplane, right? If you spotty, you're in the beach. Let's say I update this, right? I'm not in Jacksonville. Maybe I'll be in Orlando. And then when I get off the plane, you got Orlando sync up, like eventually got synced. What's cool, like I said, about having conflict resolved or conflict resolution, or basically keeping a revision ID tree, is that if this one's in airplane mode, if I update this, I'm actually not in Orlando. I'm in Miami. Is that how you spell Miami? Yes. I'm Canadian, so. And this one, don't forget, it's local. It's still synced to the server, but I update this and say, I'm actually not in Orlando. It's another city in Florida. Tampa? Yeah, Tampa. Any hockey fans out here? Wow, you do know Steven Stamkos, Vincent LeCavalier, no? You guys got the biggest hockey stars in your own state, and they love it here. Yeah. But anyways, Tampa. So this one's local to this image, to this app. Maybe, let's see. Maybe it got synced, right? So if you look at this, it's just doing gets and posts and gets in the background, right? So we can do a curl to check, but like better yet, let's just check here when we are off the airplane or back to civilization where there's network coverage. So the idea here is this one's local. It's also synced to the server. Oh, you see Miami showed up. Eventually, Miami showed up. So remember we had Tampa in there. Typically, other solutions it's based on the last write wins. So Tampa to this, the one on the left, to this left app, they never knew Tampa existed because last write wins, Miami wrote last into that key. This is just like my interpretation of what a conflict is. I basically did a UI render that, hey, there's some sort of thing that happened. But you can basically resolve conflict, right? So the entire tree, B tree, so to say, is maintainable, right? This particular thing is simply a Boolean, right? Like you can look this up here. Let's open a new one. I'm not Korean, but I have a Korean flag. Your API reference, native, document changed. So I do conflict. Is conflict, right? It's just a Boolean that you have a callback for. You can get back and then do something on the UI. I just did that, Back to the Future thing here. But essentially, if you look at this, right, like I can basically just not do anything, right? Because we provide a default winner, like Miami here is a winner, but then the user will never know that a conflict existed. But it's just to showcase that if there is a conflict, like it's there for you to take and cherry pick. You can go to that olive tree and pick wherever you want to pick. You can pick a winner, you can pick Miami. You can see like, even if you delete here, like if I delete Miami, see Tampa is still there. So if you think of it like computer science, red hat trees, like you have a node before that was called Orlando, and two children spun off from it. You got a Tampa child and you have a Miami child. There's a conflict there. So you can write a logic to actually, hey, if there's a conflict, merge the two, like do like Miami, like string one, concatenate those strings, or pick a default winner, or let the user, like I just did here, decide like, hey, I want this person, I want that location instead. So that's Couchbase in motion. Let's see if the Jacksonville, nope, not yet. Maybe if I do it one more time here. Nope, but you eventually get it, right? That list will eventually be there. Back to PowerPoint. There's anything else here to show whatnot. I can also do more in depth with code and how to do all this stuff too, but I have actually online tutorials that I created. It's like on a GitHub link, and you can kind of check that out yourself. So I want to show, like, since I mentioned a couple of things, like where are some stuff you can kind of like get some resources. It'll be fun. Not any shameless self-promotion, but like that's me. If you actually have questions, just Sweetie Will, Twitter, Sweetie Will. The GitHub stuff is here. So you can see like it's pretty awesome. Like the one I used right now is Android. So if you do like Android, Couchbase Lite Android, like this is what all the paying customers are using. You can see like our issues. Like you can actually file an issue yourself. It's pretty sweet. There's actually community pull requests that we actually have, bugs and whatnot. Zero. I think iOS has some PRs, open PRs, and this one, Couchbase Labs. If you go to Mini Hack, this is what I contribute to. There's like a kitchen sink one. You can pick your flavor. I'm doing a lot of Swift now too, so let me know. So you can go through this. It's like 16 steps, I think. It's really just 15 steps. You can get a working application running. You can get local persistence. You can get sync. You basically can get a full understanding of like what Couchbase Mobile is and how to do it. If you want something more in depth, on my Twitter, I'll surface a link again. But I created another tutorial here. Oh, where is it? It's another tutorial. This one's more in depth, and like again, I actually had, I think, 2 or 3 people like give me PRs because there were some code bugs in there. But yeah, like you can see like how to create this, build it, like what is Couchbase, like how do you data model. Yeah, play around with it. If you forget, like I have it on a card here too. I can shoot that over to you guys. I talked about Waffle.io. I want to show you this. It's pretty damn neat. Like you can see our entire sprint plans like openly here on just Waffle.io if it loads up. What else? We got video. There's video tutorials. Have you guys heard of MongoDB before? For sure. You can look at. Have you heard of Viber, the app? No. Have you heard of Skype? This is like a famous brand that's pretty popular in Asia and Europe. Why am I showing you this? Is because Viper switch from Mongo to Couchbase. You talk to their CTO. He's pretty ticked off about this. So you can read up on like why they did it, right? Like they try to horizontally scale this and didn't work out. Like it costs money too if you horizontally scale. Have you heard of parse before? You know what parse is built on? There you go. Do you know the reason why I was at Facebook maybe 8-9 months ago? No, they're trying to explore how to scale or outcast or build their own, and this is open source, right? And they're just for the record, they're not going to use Couchbase because Facebook is so specific. They're just going to build their own, right? But there's great pieces of why Viper, who used Mongo to switch to Couchbase, why they're looking at the good parts, right, of how to incorporate that into like a parse and their infrastructure, right? So that's why. And you can see like what's icebox, what's backlog, what's coming, the current sprint plan. This is not going dark, just to let you guys know. What else? That's the API. Oh, I'm here if you want to have questions about the tech forums. Like, that's me. I'm answering stuff there too. But yeah, you can have full support from our engineering team and myself here. Where else you can have stuff? Any questions? Field some questions. Hey, man.
So I actually used this one time, and I don't know if this was just because I didn't know how to do it or not, but it made me think of it when Jacksonville didn't show up. Is there a way, especially when you're doing a continuous synchronization, to see what's the status, what's happening right now? The first time the user connected, I would be trying to download 100,000 documents.
Yeah.
That's too many, but and there wasn't. I couldn't find a way to show that, hey, just wait a second, something's going on, and you're 20% done, you're 40% done.
Sure.
Basically, the users will out of having to just connect, leave their phone running for 30, 40 minutes, and then everything would probably be okay.
Right.
I couldn't show them what's going on.
Right. So the question is how would the client or you as a developer in your development environment determine if something is coming down or going to be eventually coming down, right? Or is already done? So there are a couple ways or techniques. There are APIs there too, but essentially you can have a curl command, essentially. Or you can, another thing is don't sync that many documents down at once. Even if we live in like super Wi-Fi great environments, it's just not cool to do. But essentially what you can do is just have one property, one key in that document be your simple listener or query. As soon as that comes down, right, you can have everything else come down eventually. So you can have, because you're looking into a database, right? So you can have one document itself be the kind of the predecessor or have all the keys in there that you like. That's a smaller payload essentially, right? And when something else is done or that connection is there, you can fetch or do what you want to do. How it works in the background essentially is the client is going to do a get call, a get request, a post request, back to the server. So if, let's say you're downloading a 10 megabyte file, you're like 99% done and your battery just dies. Like my phone is always out of battery. When you open that up again, it's gonna resync because it never did a get call, a post call back. So you basically have mismatch IDs altogether, mismatch counters. That's what I'm saying. So another way to do is just simply do a query locally to see what your count is versus what your server count is. If there's a mismatch there, you're not synced up, right? Cool. Any other questions? Hey, hi. Do I have or do we have?
Yeah, you have a case.
IoT?
Yeah.
Sure. There's a couple of cases. So,
Like current customers or
yeah. Have you heard of the pub? So the question is, do we have IoT use cases and whatnot?
because we see the quality and TCP or
Yeah, I know. Couchbase Server may look like B2B and everything, but it's like, I'm going to show you. So I care about this space a lot, to be very honest. Where does it? Blog.couchbase.com. I'm behind in my blogging. You like bacon? Yeah,
Oh, beacons, yeah.
beacons, yes.
That's an Eskimo, right?
Yeah. Oh well, I have Estimo in my bag, but there's also another one I have. It's pretty cool. It's called Gimbal. I don't know if you heard of them. They're basically just wrapping Bluetooth up, right? Like Gimbal. Not that low, but basically you can follow this tutorial. You can get Couchbase working on an app and get beacons running with it. That's kind of IoT, right? Gimbal is another Estimo, right? It's doing beacons. So the PubHub model. Have you heard of Library for? No, definitely not. This is a nonprofit organization, Library for All. So what Library for All is doing is trying to enable education in developing countries. And they have a PubHub model, meaning that they have a Pi server, Raspberry Pi, basically. And then they have Couchbase running from that. And they basically have students' tablets sync with e-readers, EPUBs, PDFs, etc. So it's basically creating a hotspot in an environment that doesn't really have signal in developing countries, right? So that hub is emitting the Wi-Fi signal outwards, broadcasting it out, and you have these thin client on the edges. That's basically you're going to be pushing out these docs. So what they're exploring is actually, I talked to them about peer-to-peer because essentially you don't need that broadcast. So short answer is yes. Long answer is what I just gave you. Yeah. They said to tap my watch, so. Any other questions? Oh, two more really quickly. Yeah.
Do they have the library built in for the iOS library? Is that in Objective-C?
It's in both. It's built in Objective-C, but we support both, yeah. Question is, what flavor do we support for iOS? Both, Swift and Objective-C. What's it built in? It's built in Objective-C. If not, just write your bridging headers, right? Like, yeah. Just make sure you update. I think it's editor, NS manager or something. You just swap that out, yeah. Yep.
Actually, I have a handful of questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, Couchbase versus Parse, you guys, it's
Completely different, yeah.
right, but I mean, there's some ideas.
Sure.
So, I mean, but, Parse is hosted by Facebook and everything, so you need to host your own Couchbase server then?
Yeah, you
Or does Couchbase offer their own things?
we don't. We don't. If you want, maybe I can pass a URL that's my personal, and you can just use it, right? Because no one likes spinning off servers. But essentially, you manage your own stack. It's just software out there.
It has all the, Parse has much better, ACL support versus, say, CloudKit,
Mhm.
as far as user sharing. Does Couchbase, it's on par or better than, Parse in that respect, or?
I don't know. Short answer is I don't know. I Yeah, I think the short answer to that is you can do it in terms of better or not. I just don't have that visibility on it. The last time Yes. Yeah. Yep. Like here, this is Amazon. If you want, you can just click a couple buttons, do the free, T1 micro tier. These are just image assets. It spins it off for you. Just be careful. If you do a hiccup, Amazon does, there's a reason their stock price is what there is. So, yeah. And to the parse question, parse is built on Mongo. So you imagine so parse came into existence because everyone was using Bez or BlackBerry. Really, like they have a great service. So Urban Airstrip came along and offered push notification, and parse basically came along and offered push notification. Then they realized like everyone likes hosted services solution, right? Like database, hosting, push notification. So you can build your parse killer on a database. Just make sure there's a think twice if you want to build it on what they built it on, right? So, any other questions? If not, stick around. Oh yeah, pass this around. But that's the talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.